Shalom and welcome to 1 Kings chapter 16. You're going to have, we are going to have a stripped down version of this program or the content on this channel for the next week or so. I'm going to use a lo-fi mic. I'm not even going to use this microphone. So just please be patient with us. We're going to, when I say us, I mean the channel. It's not like we have multiple staff, it's just me. But please bear with us as we go through this next week of being in transition. So 1 Kings 16, there are 34 verses. Looking at the first difference in between these two texts, the Septuagint and the Masoretic, we have 2 verses against. Okay, so Yehu spoke to Baasha versus spoke against Baasha. Verse 2, earth, I lifted you up from the earth versus dust. There's an addition of to anger. So you're going to notice this throughout this chapter, that it's always provoking him to anger, talking about Hashem. And that seems to frame him as a very angry entity. Vanities versus sins. Okay, not much to say about that. Verse 3, behold, I raise up enemies, in brackets, versus I will take away the prosperity of Baasha and take away the prosperity of his house. Okay, you know what? That's actually a significant difference now that I read that. Pardon that. Let me just put that on silent. Okay, so again, raise up enemies versus to take away the posterity. It's one thing to take away someone's posterity. Akhar, let's just look that up quickly. But posterity is like their supplies, their substance. And it's another thing altogether to raise up enemies. You know what? I want to look up this word posterity, because I'm not even sure what it means. Future generations of people. Okay, so I will take away the future generations of your people versus to raise up enemies. So they are almost completely the opposite ends of the spectrum. So future generations versus enemies. So that's verse 3. So he's going to take away his future generations and just altogether, future generations. Baasha, you're done. I'm going to skip ahead to verse 9. It says here, Hasa or Hosa? Okay, Hosa. Zimri, captain of half his cavalry, conspired against him while he was in Tirzah, drinking himself drunk in the house of Hosa versus the house of Arza. So we can see those are spelled a lot differently. It's not even an R in the Septuagint version of the name. Verse 11, there's an addition of he left him not one that pisseth against a wall, neither of his kinfolks nor of his friends. So that was added. Verse 12, and 2. So he smote all the house of Baasha according to the word which Adonai spoke against the house of Baasha, and 2 Yehu the prophet versus and by Yehu. So let's read that in the Masoretic. Thus did Zimri destroy all the house of Baasha according to the word of Adonai, which he spake against Baasha by Jehu the prophet. Okay, I mean, they're pretty similar. Both of the words come from Adonai, so that's the point. Verse 13, led Israel astray to sin versus made Israel to sin. So one is leadership, leading them to do sin, setting the standard, leading by example, versus forcing them or causing them to sin. Okay, so I'm going to put that as that's just a difference. I wouldn't say significant difference. Potentially significant difference. Let me think about that a little bit. Would you say this is a significant difference, viewer? He led Israel astray to sin versus caused them to sin, made Israel to sin. Leadership versus forcing them to. It's one to think about. You know what? I'm on the fence about that one. It is a difference. Verse 15, or skipping that, verse 18, his versus surprised. Oh, no, his versus the. His city versus the city. So it is Zimri's city. And it says in the footnote of the hard copy, whenever I say footnote, it automatically means hard copy moving forward. So just keep that in mind. So footnote says taken. So his city was taken versus his city was surprised. That's an interesting, I would almost say that is a significant difference, I would say. Because it's one thing to take a city, but to surprise it altogether means you kind of ambushed them, or, a surprise takeover, essentially. It's one thing to know in advance, to see those things happening, but to have it done in a surprising way is completely different. We see inner chamber versus palace. And then verse 19. Because of his sins which he committed versus his sins which he sinned. Conspiracies in verse 20. His conspiracies wherein he conspired versus treason that he wrought. So one is betrayal, treason, and one is conspiracies. So let's look up conspiracy in the Webster's just to get a good understanding of it. So conspiracy is an act of conspiring, so planning to overthrow perhaps, so that could be betrayal, linked to that. An alternate definitions are an agreement among conspirators, so they agreed amongst themselves to do a plan of some sort, a plot, versus a group of conspirators. So a conspiracy is made up of a group of people. So this could be his groups wherein he organized. Could be that. There are three different possible meanings here. But treason is more narrow. It's not as open to different possibilities. Okay, so that is verse 20. Verse 22, there's an omission of behold. Okay, I don't even see that in verse 22. Maybe I'm in the wrong chapter right now. Well, that's verse 21, isn't it? Omit, behold. Okay, we're going to skip verse 21. Verse 22, there is an omission of his brother, Joram, and Jordan his brother. I see Jordan. I don't see. It says Joram. If it's Joram or Jordan, his brother was omitted. Thamni died and Joram his brother at that time. So there's no mention of his brother, Thamni's brother, dying in the Masoretic Verse 24, continuous difference of the following name and place. Samaron, so Mount Samaron of Samer. So what is Mount Samaron? In the Masoretic, it is well known, even today, as the hill Samaria of Shemer. And there's an omission of the Lord of the mountain. The Lord of the Mount, the Lord of the mountain. Mount Samaron of Samer, the Lord of the mountain. A significant difference in the same verse. Mountain, he built upon the mountain, versus he... it's the next part. They called the name of the mountain versus they called the name of the city. So it seems to be a mountain, not so much a city. Or is it a city in the mountain? And then we see here, Lord of the Mount, Samaron, after the name of Samer, the Lord of the Mount. Let's just rewind here. They called the name of the mountain Samaron, which he built after the name of Samer, the Lord of the Mount. So I read that a little backwards. I moved this over here just to make sense of it. So they called the name of the mountain, which he built after the name of Samer, the Lord of the Mount, Samaron. So that's the name of the mountain, Samaron, or Samaria, which is after the name of Samer, who is the Lord of the Mount. So who is Samer? Is that a person or an Elohim, like a false Elohim? I'm not sure. In the Masoretic, it says Samaria. And it says Adon of the hill. So they called the name, I should say he called the name of the city Samaria, which is after the name of Shemer, Adon of the hill. So that seems to be a person, perhaps. Okay, that's verse 24. Moving along, verse 28. There's an omission. It says here, it's a large chunk of text. I don't know if I should read that all. But you know what? Since it was omitted, I will read it. In case there's anything really important. It says, and in the 11th year. So the omission starts from and in the 11th year. So let's read it on the screen. And in the 11th year of Omri, Jehoshaphat the son of Asa reigns, being 35 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Gazubah, daughter of Seli. And he walked in the way of Asa his father, and turned not from it, even from doing right in the eyes of Adonai. Only they removed not any of the high places. They sacrificed and burnt incense on the high places. Now, the engagements which Jehoshaphat made with the king of Israel, and all his mighty deeds which he performed, and the enemies whom he fought against, behold, are not these written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah, or Yehuda? And the remains of the prostitution which they practiced in the days of Asa his father, he removed out of the land. Okay, so that is a significant omission regarding the prostitution. So I'm going to put a note there, significant difference, because this was omitted. As well as everything else he did, but that stands out. So they removed not the high places, but they did, just to be fair, they did remove the prostitution. And there was no king in Syria, but a deputy. Then the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, I will send forth thy servants and my servants in the ship. But Jehoshaphat would not. And Jehoshaphat slept with his fathers, and is buried with his fathers in the city of David, and Joram his son reigned in his stead. Okay, and there's a footnote in the hard copy, obviously hard copy. It says at Tharshish, so you'll notice there was a portion of this omission that contained the words at Tharshish in the Alexandrian. It says the ship was made for Tharshish. I don't see where that is right now, but there is a ship that was made in verse 28. Okay, I can't seem to find it right now. I might have to just do a word search. Tarsis. Or was it Tarshish? Okay, this doesn't exist. Let's just look for ship. Okay, my servants in the ship. Okay, it doesn't seem to can't find that Tarshish part. Okay, well, I apologize for that delay. Verse 29, a big difference. It says in the second year, it's our first big difference of the chapter, by the way. In the second year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, so this is the timeline being provided, the second year of Jehoshaphat. What does the Masoretic say? Well, it says, doesn't even say Jehoshaphat. This is the father of Jehoshaphat, the 38th year of Asa. So these are two very different timelines. One with Jehoshaphat succeeding his father Asa, and one where Jehoshaphat is not even king yet. So two wildly different. Okay, not wildly, but they're significantly different, and actually big. It's a big difference to say one king is ruling and it's only his second year, and the other one is saying no, it's actually Asa as king, and it's his 38th year. He's still he's not done ruling yet. Verse 31, and it was not enough for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, talking about Ahab, verses, and it came to pass as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sin. So one is saying, it's not such a big deal. Another one is saying, it wasn't not enough. It was not enough. He had to do more. He had more sins to do than just saying, he just took it lightly. No, this man was certainly determined to go beyond. It wasn't just him not caring, being lackadaisical. He truly was doing worse, and seems almost intentionally perhaps. That's just speculation on my part, but that's the tone of the reading. Verse 32, house of his abominations, talking about Ahab's abominations, versus the house of Baal. And the footnote reads, instead of abominations, the house of his provocations. So things that provoked Adonai. Verse 33, and just in passing, when it says provoked, you'll notice automatically that the Masoretic says provoked to anger, but even Adonai Yeshua HaMashiach said to Hasatan in the wilderness, you shall not put Adonai to the test. Do not provoke him. Essentially, I think that's what it means. And that's along the same lines, provoking him, testing him. But this is not the right kind of test where you're proving his faithfulness. You're provoking him because of the abominations, because of you practicing against what he commanded. Okay, so that is 32. Verse 33, an omission. I was going to say an abomination, but an omission says abominably. So Ahab made a grove, and Ahab did yet more abominably. So he didn't just do more, he did more abominations. So he really did seem to be doing it intentionally. It's not like I just accidentally did it, just by default. I didn't know any better. He was ignorant. No, I believe he was doing this on purpose. That's the tone of this reading. It continues to build on the previous verses, pretty much since he was introduced. in 29, verse 29 there. And then there's an addition in the Masoretic of to anger in verse 33. Again, provoking him to anger. It's always anger. Another big difference, I believe this is the second big difference of this chapter. It says here, there's an omission, and to sin. So let's read that in full. And Ahab made a grove, and Ahab did yet more abominably, to provoke Adonai Elohim of Israel, and to sin against his own life, so that he should be destroyed. Do you see why that's a big difference? He's not just doing things out of ignorance and there's no consequence. There's a very great consequence. This is not a trifling matter. It's not a trivial thing he's doing. He is sinning against his own life. And what's the consequence? He should be destroyed. That's the judgment. He did evil above all the kings of Israel that were before him. So Ahab, very evil man. I think we could conclude that. And that's the end of this video. And this analysis, the side-by-side comparison and compare and contrast between the Septuagint and Masoretic for 1 Kings chapter 16. Thank you very much for your time. I bid you all shalom and salam. Maranatha.